is always predicting what's going to happen next. And we couldn't live without it. If you were to suddenly change into someone else, or my computer were to explode for no reason, or I'd suddenly find myself in New Zealand.
You wake up and you're in New Zealand.
Out of the blue, and we couldn't cope. It would be impossible. So we need those predictions, and our beliefs, to some extent, are attempts to pin down the world in words and concepts so that we can deal with it.
So good morning, good afternoon, g'day, everyone. This is Kallum and Conor with the Unplugged Podcast number 36, and we are very excited because we have a very well-known name in the consulting, training, and NLP space, all the way from the UK, Joesph O'Connor. Welcome to the Connect Unplugged number 36. Kallum will share with the world a little bit more about you.
Thanks, Joesph, for being here. Joesph is a celebrated writer, executive coach, and coaching trainer with a passion for blending art, science, and personal development. Starting his career as a classical guitarist, Joseph's curiosity led him to neuro-linguistic programming, where he authored the pioneering book that I believe is the only one of its kind that talks about the connection between NLP and music. Since then, he has written 20 books on coaching, NLP, systems thinking, and neuroscience, translated in over 30 languages and selling over 500,000 copies around the world. As the co-founder of the International Coaching Community, one of the largest coaching organizations globally, with over 17,000 members, Joesph has been at the forefront of advancing coaching excellence. He also founded the Neuroscience Coaching Center, bridging cutting-edge neuroscience with practical coaching techniques. A lifelong learner and creative thinker, Joesph is currently exploring new horizons as he works on a science fiction novel. Joesph, thank you for being here.
Thank you. That was a great introduction.
Very impressive. There are things that we normally go for about an hour and 15 minutes, but I think with all of that, we can deep dive maybe again in the future. Welcome to the Connect Unplugged podcast. It's an absolute pleasure to have you. Where we always like to start off is a little bit about your history. So Kallum mentioned, obviously, you got a lot of you invested a lot of your life into music. You guitar, I think, came up. Was it always that way? Can you share a little bit about your upbringing and how you fell into or purposely brought yourself into the music industry and then NLP?
Okay. Well, to make a long story a little bit less long. I'm more interested in music. My father played the guitar, my mother played the harp, my sister played the guitar, harp, and sang beautifully. So in self-defense, I had to do something.
Yeah, it's like the medical families. Everyone's a doctor in our family. So
yeah. So anyway, I learned the guitar. I love music and I love the guitar, and I taught guitar for many years. As a profession as well as performing, and of course it was the 60s, so I did play in a rock band. But
nice one.
So
do you have a ponytail?
No, just the very long hair.
Got it.
Didn't do it like ponytail. Yeah. So, and I was always interested. As a guitar teacher, I can teach people how to play technically, and that's fine. But I was always more interested in mind game and in the human game of music as well. Because my father was an actor, so it's the same sort of thing: stage fright and the sheer nervousness of being under consideration, as it were, being watched and listened to. And a lot of people are very good, much less good. And what I used to do, I taught beginners, but I also taught some very good players, players. And what I used to do is I used to kind of bring them into my studio and sit them down for, please take out the guitar, play a little bit, just practice, warm up. I'll go and make us a cup of coffee. So I would do that, but I would also listen outside the door, and I would hear some beautiful playing, really nice. Well, then I sit down with coffee down, and I say, okay, so what have you been working on? Play me something. And, 99 times out of 100, they were nowhere near the same level that I could hear. They were nowhere near up to their potential within the space of, half a minute.
Mm.
So nothing had changed in terms of their skill. Their skill was exactly the same as it was half a minute ago. So why were they not able to do it? So clearly, I was very interested. There's something going on here. There's something inside their head. The greatest opponent, the greatest enemy of anyone is themselves, because we all know our own little, we all know our own weaknesses, and we all, as performing artists, we all have a little voice inside the head that goes, that wasn't very good. Oh, look out, I'm going to make a mistake. Oh, teachers here, teachers judging you, we all have it. So this interested me a lot, and it led me to a lot of studies around, what happens and why do people feel like this and how does it manifest? And it's an issue that isn't just about performing arts. It's there in sports. There's no doubt about that. The top players are not only very good, but they're also able to control their state in such a way as to allow themselves to be very good at the precise time when they need to be very good, which is really the time when it matters. But it's the same with CEOs, it's the same with salespeople, it's the same with managers. You've got to be able to do the thing and act well, not just in your head or afterwards, but at the time when it's really needed. And that's what's going to make a difference. So, and NLP was one of those things that I went into in my search for answers.
How did you know? Because back then, I think we spoke offline, and you found your way into NLP in the early 80s. Back then, I would imagine NLP was at its infancy, very much at its infancy. How did you even know that it existed back then? There's no internet, there's no Google. How did one find out about it?
A guitarist friend told me, said, well, hey, there's an interesting seminar down in Bristol by some guy, neurolinguistic, something like that, but could be interesting. Why don't you go? So I did. We did. And I thought it was fascinating, absolutely fascinating. And I went back and I read all the books on NLP that I could get my hands on, all 6 or 7 of them.
At the time, yeah.
And then I followed it up. I did a practitioner training, which was wonderful. Carl Friedman was one of the people who John Grinder and Jude Lazy were together. They also did a seminar. Number of guests were there. Virginia Satir was billed, but unfortunately wasn't able to make it.
Didn't make it, yeah.
So I thought that was fascinating. And one of the first, I can remember that one of the first NLP seminars I went to, they did the rapport drills where you were mirroring and listening. And I just thought this was amazing. So I wanted to do this. I could see it had incredible potential, not only for my own state of mind, because, I'm talking about my students, but I suffer as well. Everybody suffers to some extent. But also how to teach, being able to teach in the way that my student can learn, instead of what many people do, which is to teach in the way that they learn, or teach in the way that they wish teachers would teach. Teach them. But that doesn't work. So I just liked it, and I started listening, and I thought I wrote the first book. I believe it was the first book outside the United States on NLP, which was about NLP and music, and specifically using NLP to play and teach music.
Fascinating. So before you attended your first practitioner training, did you say, were you a music teacher? Was that your full-time profession?
Yeah.
And classical music, rock guitar, all genres,
Yeah, both.
everything.
I used to when I first got into NLP, I didn't really believe anything that they said without testing it. And
Yes.
which is what they say, don't believe me, test it. So I got the reputation of being a very strange guitar teacher, because at the end of the lesson, I used to say, can you do a little bit of psychological research here? I'd like you to imagine, what color is your front door? And what's the sound of the guitar playing? And how do you feel when you put your hand into warm water? These BAK type questions.
Yes.
And they're asking me. I didn't tell them that, of course. I just told them it was kind of interesting.
Some fun. Yeah.
And I validated to my satisfaction that eye movements did follow mostly those sort of representations. So that was interesting. And I used to try out a lot of other things as well. I was a very strange guitar teacher. But as a guitar, first of all, as a guitar teacher, teaching children in schools, for many of them, this is one of the few times in the day when an adult will give them 30 minutes of their undivided attention. Really, really important. I'm talking children age of about 7 to 12 or 13.
Okay.
And so they used to laugh at lessons because I did give them my undivided attention. And many of them liked the lessons more than they liked the guitar, so they didn't practice. Just the go from the guitar, but any kind of music teacher, you've got to practice, you've got to practice, you've got to practice.
Yes.
And I used to tell them, don't practice. I forbid you to practice. If you got some overwhelming idea that you really want to practice, then that's okay. But basically, don't bother if you don't want to.
And
of course, most of them practice at least double what they were doing before. Just from the fact that most other lessons will do the opposite of what the teacher tells them.
very smart.
And then the other thing was again something in NLP. I remember they were talking about Milton Erickson and how he used to prescribe a symptom. Somebody came in and he would basically tell them to go and do it more in order to find out. So when in a lesson, students would make a mistake and they say, I made a mistake. I said, don't worry about it, do it again. And they go, I said, make that mistake again. But do it properly this time. Really
Do the mistake properly.
Let's hear it. So they would make the mistake again. They find some difficulty in doing that. And
Interesting.
Then, of course, okay, well, now you know how to make that mistake. It's under your control. Right? You don't have to do it again. Mistake is something you don't want to do. Now you know how to do that. So make a different mistake. And that worked, actually, very well.
So when you were teaching the guitar,
yeah,
someone would make a mistake and you would encourage them to make that mistake again.
I'd say do it again, yes, but this time really do it properly, do it consciously, really. I want you to really want to make that mistake. Go on, do it. And so they make the mistake, practice the mistake, but not too much. And then, okay, now you've got that mistake under control. That's not going to come into it unless you want to. So it's basically what people think is not under their control. If you can show them it is under their control or make it under their control, then it's not a problem anymore.
Interesting. Fascinating. Do you think that when we have someone who is in a situation where well, I guess the question is, how many times would they often make that mistake before they realize that they could own it?
I don't know. It's an interesting principle. I'm not saying that it works all the time. And of course, Milton Erickson is a great hypnotherapist. But that thing of prescribing a symptom is an interesting way of approaching some learning difficulties. Let's back off and put it top line.
Well, I love this because my little guy, he's just turned 9. He has dyslexia, and I'm going to do this with him, and use this process with him, and I look forward to seeing the results of it because he does like to do a good job, but he beats himself up, and I think if I can empower him to own it and to consciously know how to do it, then he can consciously choose to produce a different behavior.
Yeah, and he's probably very, very good. And so the more go up and the better people are at something, the more they put back when they don't do it for whatever reason.
Fascinating. So, crazy guitar teacher, did your practitioner, let loose with the NLP skills. Then you did master practitioner shortly after, and then you became a trainer. At what year did you become a trainer?
Oh, I can't remember. I think it's very true. I mean, there wasn't that many practitioners or master practitioner trainings around.
Yeah, I would imagine. Yeah.
They were mostly in the United States. I think I did master practitioner 84, which was great. All the guests were Charlotte Bretto, John Grinder, Robert Dilks, and then maybe trainer in the 90s. I don't remember.
And when was the transition into I'm going to now make a difference in the world with my NLP trainings? Was that in the 80s? Because you were writing books quite frequently. You've written 20 books, I think Kallum said.
Yeah, I mean, I wrote it with John Seymour, who at the time was running an NLP centre in Bristol, right in the 80s. He's one of the very first in the UK. And it was the kind of first method book on NLP, introducing NLP. And this was published in, I think, 84. And I've still got a picture of the cover. The cover is amazing. This is 1984. Okay, so NLP was very, let me say, well, a bit weird. It certainly had no focus in companies or business or anything like that. It was very hippie. So, introducing NLP had this cover. It was blue and green, and it had kind of soaring trees, pine trees, like in Yosemite in California, with the sun filtering down, and a picture of a beautiful girl with long hair sitting on a kind of dinner plate, floating up through the trees.
Sounds very Santa Cruz from the 70s. Yeah.
Absolutely, very Santa Cruz. They changed the cover a couple of years later to something in blue stripes that as NLP became more accepted. But that was I think the first kind of book that tried to put everything together, rather than the books at the time, which were to a large extent these seminal transcripts of Richard and John from the United States. So yeah, introducing NLP did well because people wanted it. They wanted to know, the more analytical people wanted to know, well, how does this work and why does it work and how do you do it? And
Yes.
So that was great. And then that gave us the freedom then, because the publisher did well on that, to write some other books on training and a number of others on NLP.
And you've traveled and taught in 30 countries, I think I read on your website. So.
At that time, it's changed now, because but at that time, if you had a book out, or even better, 2 or 3, then you were an expert, and people wanted to hear what you had to say. And so that led then to you being invited to different countries by an NLP Institute, which was fantastic.
Yeah. On a speaking tour.
Before we,
Cal.
Before we get into your written works, because I'm really interested into diving into especially the book that you've written, where you've outlined the connection between NLP and music, contrasting those two seemingly different areas of your life that obviously complement each other. I'm looking forward to that. You talked earlier about being around some of the greats of the field in the preliminary years of when you got started. You mentioned that Virginia Satir was meant to come out to a program that you were in, but she wasn't able to make it. But you said an interesting name that I'm fascinated about, and a lot of our listeners hear his name spoken in the trainings when the trainer is looking to describe how memory works, and that was Carl Pribram. Can you just talk to what it was like being in his presence, what he was like as a man, and some of the things that you learned from him around neuroscience and memory?
I know you're testing my memory. This is 43 years ago. No, 42. Jesus. 18 and 25 was 43. Mark Rebram was a lovely man. He was very academic in a way. He lectured. In NLP, you don't usually get lecturers. You get people hands-on, and you go and do exercises, and you discover for yourselves, and you bring back, and you get feedback and debrief and all of that thing. But Mark Rebram was more of a lecturer. And I remember I had 26 pages of notes in his 3 days. Which were fascinating. When you have someone like that, who really knows their stuff, they can just talk without notes themselves. It's just fantastic. Anybody knows about something, follow it up later, because it's too much here. It's like kind of this vast chest of treasure that you just haven't got time to look at all the wonderful things in it. You have to sort it out later. So I don't remember very much about what he was talking about, except we did go into the holographic theory of memory and how memories are stored throughout the brain, which is still considered these days. And I think also people who know him better as one of the authors of the 7 ± 2. So that you can keep 7 ± 2 pieces of information basically in the memory at the same time to remember. But of course it depends how you chunk them. 7 big chunks is how you chunk it. That's the skill really. It's not about the capacity of your memory. It's about how you can chunk things in a way that allows you to retain the most amount of information. So that was really interesting as well. Mia Sequel was also there. And of course, they did some pelvic class practice, pelvic class bodywork, which was originally in NLP, but unfortunately, I think it's a shame that NLP kind of lost the bodywork in the body, the more grounded work in the body.
That seems to be coming back now, and I'm seeing a lot of people bringing that back into NLP. Some of the different schools in Australia are doing it. Yeah, but I think it's fascinating to get this information from you around these guys, because often NLP can get sort of wiped off the table because it's classed as a pseudoscience on Wikipedia. But it's great to hear that there's been these amazing academics that have left their mark on the field with, like you said, the 7 ± 2, as well as the holographic memory, still being sort of held up today with the current knowledge that we have. And I think it's important for people that are in the field now or are training and teaching NLP or even coaching, that they have that sort of basis and can speak to that, because otherwise they're sort of overshadowed by some of these websites that sort of cast this doubt over the field. But we were taught that nothing from NLP is actually from NLP. It's bringing all these different sort of areas together and looking at it from a modeling standpoint of excellence. What is what makes this thing or person doing this so good at what they do? And I guess that brings me to your connection between NLP and music. and what it was that you started to dig in there. Because I know for myself, and I know Connor loves music as well. I've always noticed growing up that music can change your state, affect your behavior, and then obviously your results. Some of us put motivational music on when we're working. For me, I like to listen to classical music because it helps me to train my mind to stay focused. Can you talk about your perspective on NLP and music and some of the realizations and some of the learnings that you had through that process?
Yeah, I did a modeling project. I wanted to do a modeling project for the master practitioner, and I want to do a modeling project on musical memory. How are musicians how do they represent the music in their minds, and how do they remember it? And I was lucky enough to be able to, of course, I wanted to find very good musicians. I was lucky enough to be able to get access to the Memory School in Surrey, which had these incredible students, aged between about 16 and 19, who were really amazing. And I got to talk with a number of them. How did they remember musical sounds? One of the really fascinating things, and I can remember this really clearly, you would think that musical memory is about auditory memory. Yeah, but this seems obvious. And yes, it is, but of course we know that it's not just about auditory memory. And one of the things I found with nearly all of the really good students who also had very good musical memory was that they represented it in different systems, and in particular in post. I can remember one student, I'm saying, how do you tell the difference between this major chord and this minor chord? And he's going, I don't know, they're just different.
Asking someone that question would be quite profound. No one even thinks about that.
He could taste it. Yeah.
Running the chords round in his mouth. And many of them did this. I thought it was really fascinating. And of course, I incorporated that into my teaching in terms of musical memory, how we want to remember these pieces of music. You can't just rely on auditory, it seems like visual, because you've got to use other things as well. And I have extremely good kinesthetic auditory, but not very good visual. So NLP was very good for me in terms of developing my visual system. So I got something back there. We all have our strengths and our weaknesses.
Yeah, it's funny that you say about the different representational systems that people remember music by and thinking that it would be auditory. For me, growing up playing piano, I used to remember all of my pieces off by heart, but it was definitely more of a feeling that I would tap into. Not just the feeling of the keys underneath my fingers, but the feelings of how it would make me feel internally, which kind of guided me into the next note. So it's fascinating. You said that gentleman was actually tasting the minor chords compared to the major chords. That's
what does a minor chord taste like?
Well, our verbal vocabulary is very, it's not good for smells and tastes, is it? We have a lot of words for listening and visual, but not such a good vocabulary for the feelings and the tastes. So I don't know. People say that major is happy and minor is sad, but it's also more about context, how that works. I remember there was one particular thing that I can't remember, but they would also say like some sounds are dark and some sounds are light. And one student did have a kind of synesthesia whereby particular cues would show them the color. So this is how they have perfect pitch. So they'd hear a note, they'd see in their head, orange, or it's A flat.
Wow.
But ding, oh, blue, C.
Wow.
Wrong.
Can you, or did any of your work cross over into seeing how music actually affected the brain waves or affected the way that people were able to concentrate or think? Because, we hear about these different hertz, different, vibrational levels that affect the way that we think, and some are more cohesive and we have more clarity, whereas others, I guess, make us feel more confused or more irritable. Did any of your work kind of touch on those areas?
No, it is a fascinating area. Certainly, you can get types of like dark sound, but it have certain vibrations that will go into the brain waves and kind of put into or gamma waves. But certainly, music can change the mood.
Hey guys, Kallum and Conor here from Connekt Coaching. I hope you're enjoying this episode of the Unplugged Podcast. We're jumping in to let you know about something really exciting, the Forever Client Matrix.
Absolutely. What we love doing is lighting people up and having them realize that their future is bright and, most importantly, making a difference in this world. So we are very excited to be able to share this with you.
If you want to turn every prospect into a Forever Client, then please click on the link below in the description and get instant access now to your preview of the Forever Client Matrix.
Enjoy.
One of the ways to do it. I don't know how that does it, but it must have something to do with entrainment of the way that we think, as well as anchors, of course. Certain pieces of music. Music is very good at least for me, of anchoring the sound at once.
Because I've definitely seen it. You talked about entrainment, but I've definitely seen it put, groups of people into a trance together, and their mood aligns with one another, which I've always been fascinated by that.
Yeah, well, it's difficult to be aggressive when Mozart's playing, and
It is.
Yeah.
It's hard to do mathematics if the Rolling Stones are playing. So
Yeah.
I'm sure there's been a few sort of 3 a.m. sessions, dancing sessions, Cal, where the whole rooms of people are happy listening to that music.
100%.
Joesph, so at some point, did you make a decision to put more energy and focus onto the business consulting, the business coaching, and move away from the musical teaching? Or is the musical teaching and the passion you've had with that being consistent and being a current throughout your entire professional career as well? Well, let's say consulting and training career.
Well, I always loved music, and I've never given it up. It's just that I don't do it professionally anymore. I think that learning music, or perhaps to be more precise, learning an instrument, learning music through playing, because you can learn the abstract bits and pieces, and it's really boring. And children will not learn music like that. No fun at all. But actually playing music, especially music that they like. I remember one well, I think it was about 14. He wasn't, I was trying to give him pieces of music that he liked, and he wasn't really very motivated or getting anywhere. And then I found out he really liked music. And Hotel California, he desperately wanted to play Hotel California. But because I was a classical guitar teacher, he thought that was, not, there was no chance of that. So I said, okay, yeah, let's do it. Hotel California is not easy. So I kind of made an arrangement for him that I knew he would be able, it would be a challenge, but he would be able to do something with it. And he loved it. And he went forward about 6 months and a couple of weeks, really, just from applying something that he really loved doing, and it was no longer abstract. He was really interested in that, and that's the power. But music, I think it teaches you certain ways to think, and perhaps coordinates the senses as well. So it's a wonderful thing to do, especially when we're young, because as we get older, there's not really so much time to do those sort of things. So I'm glad I went when I was a kid.
Yeah, I play the guitar, and I started playing when I was about, I don't know, 10, and I've always had a guitar. I never really progressed to stage level or anything like that, but it's always been this feeling of comfort wherever I've been. And I used to do a lot of traveling around the world, and I've just always had a guitar around me, and there's something about picking it up and strumming it, even if it's the same songs I play. It just brings me back to the positive kinesthetic for when I learned it. And the songs that I play are, similar to Hotel California, just the chords, no solos. But it's sitting right here. I have it here, and when I have 5 minutes, I'll take it out. And it had been sitting on the side of the room for the last 2 years. I hadn't touched it, and I thought I should pick it up again. And I pick it up, and it always gives me a positive kinesthetic.
Definitely.
Pardon me?
Yeah. No, that's right. And the great thing about the guitar is you can take it around the world.
Yeah, I'm still tuning my vocal cords to whenever I sing at home. I think people are happier when I stop. But I enjoy it. I think I sound good.
Well, no, it's cool. I've got my guitar behind me in the room, and I still like to play. It's just wonderful, and the fingers don't forget. You may forget, but the fingers don't forget.
It's incredible. I just pick it up, and then the chords are there, and I haven't even thought about it for 2 years, and bang, it's muscle memory, musical memory is there, and it really is a kinesthetic. I found at a young age, if I closed my eyes and just listened and felt, my fingers knew where to go, whereas when my eyes were open and I was trying to tell myself where to put my fingers, I found it more difficult.
Yeah.
And I used to always think, how do those great guitarists sort of close their eyes and just play without even needing to look at the guitar? Because when you first start learning everything, you have to be consciously competent about it, or as you learn it, then you become unconsciously competent. And making that transition was quite remarkable, but it happened when I didn't know it at the time because I was young, but I would close my eyes and feel the sound, feel the guitar, feel the feeling of the chords, and then you sort of learn which ones naturally go together and have that harmonious rhythm with it. Really, and this is great. I'm tying it all together. I never even connected the dots with NLP, with playing a musical instrument. And I think we could probably map that across in many areas of our lives. If when we teach someone something, literally just to ask them to close their eyes and feel what you're learning, people would probably create that synesthesia so that they would able to learn it and recall it much more effectively. And we're not really taught that.
Yeah. Well, I used to practice blindfold, and got my students to practice blindfold as well, which they hated at first, but they really liked it because it gave them a competence that they didn't think they had. And we do rely such a lot on sight and language, to explain things. And yes, they're fantastic and amazing. But the more you can bring all the senses into it, the stronger it gets. So I like the metaphor of if you want to put two pieces of wood together to make a really strong joint, you don't just hammer one nail in or 3 or 4 nails in the same direction. You cross the nails, you make the nails cross in different directions. And this holds it much more strongly. And I think that works with the senses as well. It's just that we've got more and more used to the easy way, the road most traveled.
And then you could add some glue with the nails, and then it gets very, very, very strong. Fascinating. So Kallum mentioned a number of associations I hadn't heard of. In the introduction at the beginning of the podcast, he mentioned you started a number of communities or associations, coaching associations. In fact, you were into coaching before coaching was a thing. Your first book on coaching, I think, was in 2001, and that would have been, or I read on one of the websites that you started to introduce coaching in the 90s. That would have been very early on in the piece, because in my model of the world, the phenomena of coaching really came about in the mid, early to mid 2000s. But you obviously saw the wave coming.
Well, I mean, NLP has so many different aspects. NLP is so rich, you can do so much with it, that this becomes a problem after a while. It's like we've got this incredible toolkit. No, I enjoy this. And it's such fun. I really wanted to use it in a particular direction, and coaching was just the way that I thought was a particularly good application of all the NLP principles, because coaching does the same thing. It's basically, what do you want, goals, what's important to you, values, and what are you going to do about it? There's three main questions in coaching. Where are you now? Where do you want to be? And what's in the way? Those are the three. If you can elucidate those three coaching questions, then people will move forward. And at the same time, a coach, the only thing a coach can do is to help somebody change their thinking about particular situation. So, coaching clients will come in, any client will come in and say about a particular situation, a particular problem that they're into. And a coach can't change anything about the outside world. They can't change the terrible boss, or they can't change the bad relationship, or they can't make the person a millionaire, or give them a better house, or anything like that. They can't change anything in the real world. All they can help is to change the mental models of the person in the way that they think about it. And that's all coaches do. And yet, of course, it's amazingly effective, because our brain tends to be reactive to the world. But once it kind of step back and go, just a minute, I think I'm going to try shaping the world in a different way, because it doesn't have to be like this. Then things change. So I thought that was, I wanted to go into coaching, and I guess it was in the early 2000s. And I was living in Brazil, and coaching was around, but it was very diverse. Let's put it that way. What people were coaching changed immensely, because coaching was just coming in. So consultants would call themselves coaches, because that sounded better.
That was the word back then, yeah.
Coaches and managers would call themselves coaches. Everybody was into coaching. And so nobody knew really what coaching was, because everybody was doing something different.
Yeah.
So this is when we thought, well, how about we try and define a little bit about coaching and what it is and how it works. To see what we can do, which is similar to what happens in NLP, because I like to take a lot of information through, sift it through, see what patterns are, and then pull out the patterns to make it easier for other people to understand. So I like to do all the hard work, as it were, sorting things out, information, so other people don't have to. And that's always how I've tried to write books. And it's very fun as well, because I get to learn a lot. And if the book that I write at the end of all that doesn't surprise me in some way, isn't different from what I thought it was going to be, then I haven't succeeded.
So it's an interesting way of looking at it. Can you say that again? If the books you've written...
Yeah, I mean, I've written a number of books. I'm writing science fiction now, which is great fun. But I've written a number of non-fiction books, of course, in NLP and psychology. And I would be fascinated by a topic. The last one was neuroscience, or coaching and neuroscience, or coaching the brain. So practical applications of neuroscience to coaching. Because the brain is amazingly fascinating, but it can also get completely lost in Latin names and understanding how it works. It really doesn't tell you anything very much about how to do anything different, or change your life with it. So I'm very much interested in practical applications of neuroscience and coaching. And so, yes, of course, I have some ideas. I did a lot of research, including having brain scans myself. To start with yourself, and it's like you have to. Well, this is my opinion anyway. In writing, you have to surprise yourself. You have to create something out of all of that. That is not what you expected. It's what you expected. You haven't done deeply enough. So that when the book does come out, then it has a freshness about it. It has a creativity about it, which people, I think, can relate to. If it's just a regurgitation of what I knew all the time, that's not so interesting for me, and I don't think it's so interesting for the reader.
So there's almost a crescendo at the end.
Yeah.
of that light bulb.
Yeah. And brain does things in those moments. Yeah. But you have to feed it. You have to feed the brain with a lot of different information and not jump to conclusions. Remember John Grinder was very strong in that. He was saying, you don't just tolerate ambiguity, you embrace ambiguity. You want ambiguity. Don't try and resolve. Not victim. And this is something that I think as human beings we're not very good at.
I think it's very hard for some people to be okay with ambiguity. People are looking for those boundaries. They're looking for that the translation, I guess. They're looking for that tangible word that they can use in order to identify it within themselves. And do you think ambiguity makes people feel uncomfortable, out of control, maybe?
I mean, Buddha is the sign of the time, isn't it? Volatility, uncertainty, what's the third one? Confusion, I like it, and ambiguity. But ambiguity means that this information it points in different directions, ambi, both ways, ambidextrous, ambiguity. So it could point in anywhere. You can't decide, you shouldn't decide. And you've got to get more information. So rather than jump, which we do like to do, because as you say, as human beings, we don't like uncertainty. We want to be able to do what we do. We want to be able to predict, because we need to have some kind of predictability about the world. We can't live without it. We go insane, and that's just the way the brain works. The brain is always predicting what's going to happen next. And we couldn't live without it. If you were to suddenly change into someone else, or my computer were to explode for no reason, or I'd suddenly find myself in New Zealand.
You wake up and you're in New Zealand.
Out of the blue, and we couldn't cope. It would be impossible. So we need those predictions, and our beliefs, to some extent, are our attempts to pin down the world in words and concepts so that we can deal with it. And that's fine. It's just that if you do it too quickly, without enough information, without enough examples, then we can get into trouble. And that's the way science works, isn't it? I mean, science never believes anything. Science has hypotheses. You have a hypothesis, as Richard Feynman says, you make a guess, and then you test it.
Yes.
Then you do an experiment, and you see if the guess is, if the experiment goes according to, if the guess, let's call it a hypothesis then, if the hypothesis predicts what actually happens, then so far that hypothesis is good.
Yes.
It's only as good as its predictable value. The moment you get something that it doesn't account for, you've got to throw it out or amend it or change it or something like that. So this is how we built success in science, have managed to view the world, to understand the world the way that it's done, not by believing everything that happens, but by not believing and moving forward one little step at a time.
That's an did you just say, can you repeat that again? I think that was quite...
It was very profound, and I can't remember it.
It was along the lines of don't believe everything, but instead of it wasn't instead of believing everything, you don't believe it, but it was in the context that you were talking in.
Because it's a scientific method, isn't it? You don't believe it. You see that how can I put it? Donald Kahneman wrote a brilliant book called Thinking, I think it's called Thinking Fast, Thinking Slow, or Thinking Slow, Thinking Fast, where he says there's two kind of systems in the brain. One equals system one, which is fast, jumps to conclusions, emotional, doesn't think too quickly, quite impulsive, which works a lot of the time. Well, nothing wrong with it. We need it. We couldn't sit and think, for 5 minutes over everything that we did.
Yeah, it would.
But then system two is where we really need the logic, the thought, how do you do it? And the system two is you don't believe it. System one starts by believing what it sees. That's its weakness. That's its strength and its weakness. If what it sees is okay, if it's a representative example of something, and you believe it, that's fine. But if it isn't, no, and it might not be, it might be a black swan, then you have it. So that the scientist and system two goes, okay, hold on, so we don't have to believe this. This is one example. Let's take in some more until we get enough to be able to tentatively say, well, it looks like this is the way it is. So yes, in a sense, and I'm not saying that you can't go through life times to everything.
Yeah.
But there are times in your life, certain decisions and certain things that you need to do, where you really do need to do it. And the trouble is that system one will jump in every situation. Well, I know, we'll do this. That's it.
That's an interesting concept, system one and system two. Do you think, just from the outside looking in, hearing this for the first time, as a child, would they exercise more system ones to begin with, and they have to sort of, you get used to mastering that in a way, and then system two slowly builds up as you become a bit more experienced in life?
The brain goes through certain stages of thinking, and children can't do what we would call system two. They can't do the logic.
Almost like conscious, unconscious mind, in a way.
I guess so. I wouldn't say it's like conscious, unconscious. I think unconscious is just all the things that we're not conscious of.
Not conscious of, yeah.
So you just stick your head out of the water, and okay, you can see certain things, and it's very narrow. What you can see, it is very deep. But then you could dive down again, and you could stick your head out in another direction. But you can't see it all, and that's okay, because that water will support you if you allow it.
So with the system one and system two, you've done a lot of business consulting. Would different roles within an organization be better suited for a system one thinker, or someone who exercises system one more frequently than someone who exercises system two more frequently? Could that?
We all have both, and a lot of the time we don't need system two. You don't want to have to think about, should I really drink this water now? Quite thirsty.
So it's contemplating everything. Yeah.
But the higher up you go in an organization, the more your decisions are going to have wide-ranging circumstances. The longer time horizon you have. The higher up in an organization, the longer what I would call a time horizon. In other words, the longer you have to be able to plan ahead in order to calculate the consequences of the action. So some people in the organization, they can do things and it's not really going to impact anything much beyond the end of the day. And that's fine. Organizations need that way. But then the CEO in the office is going to make decisions which could impact 2, 3, 4, 5, 10, 20 years.
Yes.
And we've really got to think about that.
Yeah.
So, and that's one of the people who are good at that need to be in that position. And it's not something that comes very easily.
Interesting to find parallels with that. So now are you still teaching NLP? Have you gone back to music? You're writing fiction books, science fiction, I think you said.
Yeah, I'm writing science fiction.
The next Star Trek?
Oh, no. No, I'm a bit dystopian in my science fiction.
Oh.
I'm really grounded on here, dystopian futures.
Almost George Orwell?
No, not really.
Not predicting.
No, not really.
Fascinating.
It's great fun. I'm not teaching NLP. I'm still doing some coaching and some coaching training, which is great, and also some coaching and neuroscience training, which I enjoy.
Coaching in neuroscience and systemic thinking. Reading your bio, there was a part about systemic thinking. Could you share? Is that what you've created, as in that's what you've brought to the field, or could you unpack systemic thinking for our listeners?
Well, systemic thinking sees the connections between things. We tend to be, generally speaking, called an effect. I do this, that happens. I do this, that happens, with a very short time span. And we don't. If I do this, maybe tomorrow something happens, but there is a connection. We're very bad at making connections into the future. So we're happy to do a lot of things without realizing that our children, we're not conscious for it. But we don't know because we can't make connections. Systemic thinking tries to see the world more as a verb. A system is a verb. So the world is a verb, it's not a noun. So instead of seeing a thing, you see a process that is maintained by all sorts of different relationships and things. Now, you don't need to do that all the time, again, but in some circumstances, it's very important to be able to do that, to be able, from before, let's say, about looking ahead, what are the consequences of the actions that you're going to be taking, seeing how things fit into certain contexts, and making connections between things and connecting with other people. Because if you imagine a kind of like a ball of string, or something like that, with all the different strings tied together. What is going to have the greatest effect on that system is the piece of string that you pull that is most connected with many of the others. If I pull a piece of string out of that ball that has no connections with any other pieces, it's not really going to make much difference, right? The same. If I pull one that's connected with about 100 different strings, it's all going to start to change. Now, this is both the strength and the weakness. It's the heaven and the hell. Because if you want to change something, you've got to find a piece of string that's most connected with the others, and you've only got to pull it a little bit, and it'll change a lot of things. On the other hand, if you put a piece of string that's connected with the other things, and you don't want to change a lot of things, you're going to cause chaos.
Yes.
So it's the connections And in fact, I like to say, that it's a process. We're dealing with processes all the time, not dealing with things. The system is involved.
So from someone, Joesph, who was there at the beginning with the inception of coaching and when it was, beginning to be formed, you mentioned earlier that no one really knew much about what coaching was because everybody was doing something different. I think in some ways that's still true, but there seems to be more structure, more process, more systems now that connect the coaching world together and show us, you told us the three main things that we're trying to do whenever we're coaching with someone. Where do you see the field going into the future? What do you think? How do you think it will change? Do you think it will still be around in 10, 20 years time? Do you think there'll be massive impact from things like AI? And maybe, like you said, you had your own brain scanned. Will there come a time in the future where, our brains will be scanned and I guess all of this maps and meaning that we've developed over the last 40 or 50 years in the coaching industry will be able to be programmed in some way. And then, a sound or a wavelength will be changing the way we think or pulling those threads for us. Have you thought much about that? And can you kind of be a visionary for us and share what your insights are as to where it might be going?
No idea. But the system was far too complicated. I certainly had nightmares of, I don't know, 2070, where somebody goes into a coaching session and they have to lie down in an MRI and and then they come out and go, okay, well, here's an injection or here's a cold pipe or something. I don't think that's going to happen. I think there's always going to be a form for the human, the uncertainty, the ambiguity, thank God, of being a human being. Is not going to be tied down by AI. AI does big data, but it can't do infinite data. And we can. In the sense that what we can explore is infinite. We're not tied by our history, which AI is. And this is why I resist algorithms telling me what to read or think. Although sometimes they're right, Amazon did tell me that I would enjoy a book by Joesph O'Connor called Coaching the Brain, and they're absolutely right. I will, and I did. But otherwise, I try to always go for things that I don't know about and read conflicting opinions. And try to stay like that, because I think that's really important. AI can do a lot. Some people say we'll be replaced by AI. We'll probably be replaced by somebody using AI, or in the best case, we'll be replaced by ourselves using AI, and that's fine. But I have no idea how it's going to go. We're just at the beginning. The future is opening out, and I think everybody's going, what?
Yeah, it's exciting. It's exciting times. Back when cars were made and cars were created, and they started to take the jobs of the horse and carriage. I'm sure they were up in arms about that. When the digger came, and the people with their spades were probably up in arms about the diggers. I think as we have evolved as a society, there's always been some sort of new technological advancement that has probably in the short term taken something away from someone, but in the long term, it's probably created more. And it's quite it's a exciting time to be alive. I feel.
It's fantastic. It's fantastic. It has a tension in it, of course, because as an individual, you want to thrive and do well, but at the same time, as you say, it's all of us that move forward. And I guess we have to adapt in the best way that we can. And that's what we're really good on. Even doing well, really, really good on.
Every generation evolves. I mean, the generation now will not know life without internet. Whereas we all remember, thankfully, there were no cameras or not many cameras around when we were younger. So it's a big evolution.
I've got my daughter that's, once upon a time there was no internet. And she goes, what? I didn't know you were born in the 1900s. 1800s or something like that. Yeah. And we take it taken for granted now. Everything for granted.
Mm.
Well, that's the other thing our brain does. We just get so used to things. When it comes along, we get used to it. That's it. What's next? What's new? Internet boring. Just about doing something new now.
So how far in the future is your science fiction in the dystopian future?
Oh, only 2052.
Okay.
It's not to be relatable to, but far enough away for me to employ my imagination.
Can you give us a quick synopsis of what it's about?
No, not really. It's like it's set in Japan, because I love Japan. Japan's a wonderful but it's kind of virtual reality. Where virtual reality is, and we can move about in it. And it's police and thrillers and Yakuza and all sorts of things. Comes around.
You can't have a Japanese science fiction movie without the Yakuza.
No, that's right. William Gibson did it so well right at the start. Have you been to Japan?
I went there once in 2009, I think.
You're going to Tokyo. Tokyo is the future.
It's crazy. It's insane. Yeah.
Yeah, you're going to have your dial on and start, okay, this is what London's going to be like in 10 years.
Yeah. Brilliant. Well, it's coming up to 20 past 10 p.m. your time, Joesph. So in an attempt to give you some sleep tonight, I think what we'll do is we'll say a big thank you for joining us today. It's been an absolute pleasure exploring that mind of yours and to hear about the early stories from the early days in the early 80s of your journey with NLP, how that's, I guess, mapped across with the music teaching and how you've managed to write the first book about it and potentially the first book about NLP outside of the US, and how you've evolved as a person and helped create this amazing industry that Kallum and I love and we've been in for a very, very long time, and that's the NLP and coaching industry, and you've had a big influence on it. And it's really nice to hear that you're now involved with science fiction writing, doing obviously what you love, but you still have that music that you have a lifelong passion for as well with you. So a huge thank you for joining us today, Joesph.
Well, thank you for having me. It's been a pleasure. She was well done, so we continue a really good role.
Absolutely.
Thanks, Joesph.
Thank you.
Hey guys, Kallum and Conor here from Connekt Coaching. I hope you're enjoying this episode of the Unplugged Podcast. We're jumping in to let you know about something really exciting. If you are a practitioner, a coach, or a trainer in the alternative therapy modality space, the Forever Client Matrix is something that we've modeled in the last 30 combined years, both Conor and my experience. And we've turned it into a 2-day intensive, and we want to give you a preview of that, the Forever Client Matrix.
Absolutely.
We want to make the bar for them to enter into that program very, very low and have them get incredible results.
I've sold about $40 million worth, and together we've sold about $100 million worth with our teams.
That's right. We believe that trust and reliability is the currency of the future. So if you want to turn every transaction into a transformational experience, you want to turn every prospect into a forever client, then please click on the link below in the description and get instant access now to your preview of the Forever Client Matrix.
Enjoy.